Thank you to everyone who's just dialing in. We will be getting started in just a couple minutes. Okay, welcome to this weekly Wednesday webinar delivered by Stork. My name is Savannah Hance, and I'm a consultant with Stork's Asset Management Technology Group, and I will be your moderator during this webinar. Thank you for taking the time to dial in. We live in really interesting times, making us all reevaluate the choices that we make in our daily lives. So all the more thanks for taking the time to join us today. From our side, we're really happy to share our knowledge with you, and we hope that it can help you navigate this current crisis situation. Of course, during this crisis, a lot of us are working from home, so hence the less than business backgrounds that you might see behind some of the speakers today. To avoid any static background noises, we've turned all of your microphones off, but we do greatly appreciate your questions. So if you have them, you can enter them via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen during the presentation, and we'll try to address some of them at the end of the webinar. As we wait for some people to dial in, let me just start off with a few introductory slides about Stork, just to give those of you who don't know us a better idea on who we are and what we do. And this will help put into perspective the presentation that will be given today. So Stork is a global provider of fully integrated O&M, turnarounds, modifications, and asset integrity solutions. So we're not asset owners, but we feel absolutely committed to keeping assets running at peak performance during all phases of the asset lifecycle. We are an international company operating in over 90 countries worldwide, and we often use this graphic to explain the buildup of our company. I know there's a lot going on here, so let me break it down into 3 parts. So many of Stork's people are here, working day and night at the client facility to keep it up and running, or performing turnarounds and trying to get the plant back up and running as fast as possible. But we also have our own brick and mortar facilities. They're often located in industrial dense zones around the world, and they support our local site team to do their work. So think of people like specialists and inspectors who support multiple clients, or planners who are planning turnarounds months in advance. This could also be our own workshop where we repair pumps, turbines, valves, and other equipment. We also have our layer of global experts who are available to support any project around the globe. This also refers to our online knowledge base, filled with innovations that can be accessed day and night from any place in the world. Many of our digital solutions like predictive maintenance, data analytics, and turnaround software are developed by this group. Needless to say, with each project we encounter, we'll draw from all 3 layers of our company. So without further ado, let me introduce the topic for today: postponing turnarounds and what actions must be taken to manage those pushouts. As so many turnarounds, or maybe they're referred to as shutdowns or outages in your industry, but as so many are being pushed into late 2020 and early 2021 due to the COVID lockdown, there's a risky burden placed on this time period. Many people are wondering, how can we effectively manage this spike in facility shutdowns while still achieving the best results? So to share some insights with you, I'd like to introduce our speakers, Ben Thehatin and Geert Henk Wijnands. Ben is a senior consultant with Stork and has served in a variety of roles from production to engineering, asset manager, manager of maintenance and construction. He comes from the chemical industry and he's joined Stork, where he applies his extensive experience and 40+ year track record in maintenance, organizational redesign, and maintenance management. Geertank is a principal consultant at Stork and is an expert in inspection methods with a degree in technical physics. He has over 25 years experience in maintenance, design and maintenance management, and he specializes in risk-based inspection, integrity, and compliance management. He is also an SME for end-of-life replacement planning, RAMS engineering, and lifecycle costing. I wish you an inspiring and educational half hour. Ben and Geertank, the floor is yours.
So thank you, Savannah, for your introduction. Let me tell you about the content of our webinar. So the agenda for today is the lessons learned from recent turnarounds, the consequences of postponing turnarounds, and we will also elaborate on managing risk in these COVID times. So let's start with the poll. So are you considering to postponing your turnaround? And if so, by how long? Will it be no, we are moving ahead as planned? Or yes, we're postponing, then you probably know how long. Or you have shut down your facility. So let's start the poll. You will see a pop-up screen and you can choose an option. Thank you, Laura. So please choose one of the options. We will give you a couple of seconds. So we give you 5 more seconds to make your final choice. And the poll is closing now for the results. And Laura, could you see? Let me see. Okay, interesting. Some of you are not postponing, and a lot of you are postponing as well. And the longer you postpone, the more you can do on scope control, and that part will be present in the remainder of the presentation. So thank you very much. Let's look at the lessons learned from recent turnarounds. So we have been in a couple of turnarounds during these COVID times, and what we've seen is a lot of workforce anxiety. People on site, they had a lot of questions and they needed answers. And we've seen the impact. And what we believe that you need to listen and you need to explain. Communication is key. And the uncertainty on what's allowed and what isn't, that's the biggest question that people have. And of course, the old habits they have are hard to break. And agreeing on new ones doesn't happen overnight. But we also have seen that some people simply didn't turn up, dumping the burden on the others to continue. So what we missed, for example, was a couple of inspectors. And suddenly inspections became a bottleneck. What can we learn from the recent turnarounds? We had to reorganize the work at site. So one of the biggest things was the 1.5 meters. It impacted normal procedures. So you know, you have all your work package ready, but because of new procedures and you need to invent it on the spot, you will have a lot of inefficiency, maybe conflicts as well. One of the other parts was the manpower during the turnaround execution. In the original plan, you have a lot of people during execution. But if you count the numbers and you do the head count and you check what can be done in 1.5 meters, you need to come up with a plan. So you need a new approach due to COVID. So in this case, it was the half of the people during execution, and they started working in shifts. Still, you have your bottlenecks. And you probably know some of your bottlenecks, but the bottlenecks we experienced was at the entry gates, the permit desk, the changing rooms, the toilets, the canteens, the smoking areas. So you need to find solutions to cope with this. And yeah, you're striving for less people, but at the end you need more. You need more guards. You need more logistic coordinators. You need a kind of safety officer, but then it will be a COVID officer. And you need more cleaning. You also have to rethink your logistics to site. In our example, it was quite easy. The distance were not too long, but we had multiple countries involved. The Netherlands, where the turnaround was executed. People came from Belgium, people came from Germany, and they had to cross the border. And usually you have border control. But imagine if you need people from abroad, they arrive by plane. So they will probably have a passport check before they can leave and a health check as well. So it's not so easy. The next thing will be the temporary housing, the hostels, the trailer parks. They have been shut down. So you even cannot rely on public transport because the impact of COVID is so huge and you can't let them travel unsafely to the site. So you need to find solutions. And so it's change. We need change. And you need to be prepared for a lot of change management. You need to check all your work packages. You need to figure out, it's probably not all, but they're in this big pile. Which work package do you have to change? And what you can experience is you need communication. You need a lot of communication. So your TAR management team needs to spend a lot of time on communication. And you probably know you can work with fines, but if you praise the people, that's what we experience. They will help you to live the new rules. Bottom line, the tasks have been held successfully. So the consequences of postponing turnarounds. So what's happening? Your service intervals probably are stretching beyond the prescribed intervals. Will this cause to unsafe situations? Will it cause production loss if it fails? What about the warranty? Will there be, because you have overdue legal inspections, will you get a warning? Will you get a fine? Will you lose your license to operate? What about the local or the national waivers? How long? So can you run your facility without the TAR-based maintenance? Is it safe? What are the costs of unplanned downtime if it breaks down? Financially, maybe reputation-wise. And if not now, when will you do your turnaround? Somewhere in the future. So can your facility go without the TAR-based maintenance? Is it safe? What will be the cost of the unplanned downtime? So if COVID is over, and what does over mean? Possibly a second wave might turn up, and so you need to be ready, still be ready. So the task scope just probably can be frozen to a later date. And your facility is running under capacity, possibly even outside of the normal operating window. So you will need more inspections, more maintenance. And if COVID goes away, can you still get the team you wanted? Most probably it has been committed to another task? What about your main contractor? What about the subcontractors? What about the tools, the scaffolding, the cranes? Is it available? Will it be available? Think of all the postponed turnarounds that are piling up along with the regular future already scheduled tasks. So it's a kind of three-layered cake. So bottom line, you have your main contractors and the people, the resources. On top of it, you have scope growth. And on the very top of that, you have the COVID impact on the task execution. And in between of these layers will be communication. So what are we seeing regarding turnarounds, shutdowns, and outages? So we see COVID. We see a question to postpone the turnaround. We see people cutting budgets. On the other side, there's a strong, a lot of people say, do it now. Because of legal requirements, because the resources that are available or not available. The asset health is a topic. And the delay only increases the scope. So you need to find out what works best. So you need to challenge your scope. You know the common approach. We have a bucket, we get all the work and we throw it in. And the common approach is, let's do it in a turnaround. And the small bucket will be, because of all the delays, a big barrel. And it will be full of complex jobs. It will have multiple critical parts. And we will have a lot of people in a small, crowded area. So inefficiencies will turn up. Getting a lot of people at one peak time puts extreme pressure on the market. Will you get the people you want? And as costs increase, the tendency is to go for the lowest bidders. And this often doesn't help enhance the efficiency either. So we need a new paradigm. Go for the minimum scope. So at this point, I'm going to turn over the presentation to my colleague Geert Henk. Geert Henk, feel free to proceed.
Thank you, Ben. As you see, we are here in kind of a catch-22, and actually how to deal with it. It's a funnel actually, contains a number of steps, which we will step through right now. And actually what you see is the way we process this situation is by means of risk analysis. Because the risk analysis, that's really the main tool by which you can decide what to do and what not to do in a very transparent and a very open way, so that everybody can understand. It's not like sticking your thumb in the air, but it's really about decision support on a rational means. So firstly, what do? We check on the scope of the turnarounds what is absolutely necessary. So the main question there is, if we would skip it, what would happen? And of course, for that, we use again the risk analysis. And one of the options there is do an organized run to failure. So delay until it fails and prepare yourself for repairing and the situation. Another step is then that we look at if it is absolutely necessary, is there an alternative approach? So that we do, for instance, something out of the normal scope and we have a small shutdown only or of one unit of the installation. If that's possible, it will help very good also. Other means are, like with inspections, if you don't have to open the installation, or for cleaning, that you do chemical cleaning instead of the standard stuff. The third criterion is, do the items outside of the turnaround. So that's what the small turnarounds or the partly the shutdown. And then we get then to this limited scope of the turnaround. So we really get to the core of the turnarounds, of actually what is needed to maintain your asset still in a good, healthy situation. And then we need to freeze the scope, because otherwise we will, of course, see that everything starts to build up again. And we will end up again with such a large lump of activities which we don't want. We want to make it very clear and crisp. So then we go to the next phase. How do you organize such the risk analysis? Of course, some people will say, again, such a risk matrix, we know about that. But why do I show this? Because if you have a risk analysis, you should make certainly sure that this risk analysis is compliant with, for instance, the legislative requirements, and that it doesn't change, isn't something different than what you use during normal operations, for instance, from safety perspective. Because if you would do, everything would get out of balance, and that is something which you don't want. So what do you need to incorporate? Health, safety, environment, finance risks, security, all these are critical elements. And I would like to invite you to look at the EN 16991, which I have just shown in the previous picture, because that actually contains a kind of a risk matrix, which I think it's a good one. And we see a lot of people, they have risk analysis, but in the end, there are some crappy and there are only limited good ones. So it's the basis of to decide what you need to do. So for that, please have a look at that. Then, if we now go to the, we define the balance between the probability, the severity, and the risk. So we have a overall disciplines. We have the same type of approach. And actually, what have we then created? A kind of a C for CIF for the American-speaking people, which then everything, all the small nitty-gritty stuff can fall through, and only the main key items will stay on top. And these are the things that we really want to focus our attention to. These are the things that we want to manage with the required quality in order to ensure the health of the assets, which is, of course, the critical item for the turnaround. So what do we get then next? Well, after we then have set up this plan and we have got to this phase of the core, we have frozen the scope, everything is prepared, and we have done then the star setup with the various phases that you see here, starting from the initiation until the closeout. Then, of course, like what we always do with shutdowns, we start with the readiness review. What is that? What does that mean? Well, it actually means that we look at all the various tasks. Have they clearly been described, and have the related actions also been defined? That's what you see here in the figure. So you really can check out these, and this is then an essential mean in order to ensure that the quality of your scope, the whole content, it's still okay, and that you are all aligned throughout all these phases. It's very critical. Is this then all? No, there's more, because if you are having done this, you make sure that you aren't acting like the ostrich, because this it actually means that you have a limited scope. No, because you have done this activity on all your tasks, it's very clear that that you have the overview, that you are doing the right thing in the right way. So what comes next? Besides this, it's not just about the scope, it's also being prepared for people want to change something, they want to have a look. Maybe when we talk about these alternative plans, how to organize that. And for that, it is very useful if you then make your you have your plans digitized to some extent. So you can send in people who really make the nice overviews of the mapping. So all those people who are working remote, they can still view where they are and decide on alternative plans. And what you also can do, of course, is that you have the various people with various backgrounds. They have a collaborative meeting also by the internet while they are still in distance. And because they then can access all the information from a central place, that can work very effectively. So where in the past you would have all these separate Excel documents divided per discipline. Now you should take care that you have one aggregated information system, one platform, which enables you to prepare the scope, go through all the steps, including cost calculation, scheduling, which is accessible by everybody who's involved. And by doing that, you can be sure that you have the quality that actually is required to do the whole scope efficiently and effective. And of course, that's the key thing to do. So what is next? Is that all? No, it's not all. Because you have, of course, if you think about alternative plans, then there are a variety of possibilities, also using new technologies that you can apply. I won't go into detail on this one because you recently had one special webinar on this item, like new techniques, new technology, which can help you to keep the scope of your asset limited. It was on May 13th. And if you want to go to detail on these type of issues, please go to the YouTube channel from Stork, where you can see this particular item again. Is this then all? No, of course not. Normally you are used in a turnaround to work with various contractors, and especially in this COVID time, this may give rise to communication problems because all the companies with all their contractors, they have to communicate with each other. So for that purpose, it's very efficient and handy. It works very effective to have only one integrated contractor who can control everything and make sure that all the procedures that they are down there. Well, if we now look back to what have we dealt to get to today, there are these arguments to change nothing, to actually you will run across a brick wall if you would continue if you would change something. These are the legal requirements, the resource availability, asset health. These all say, well, stick to what you planned. And there is the other argument to postpone, like COVID and budgets. And actually, we now have found the balance using then this risk analysis. So what does the risk analysis do? By means of the funnel, we first check, okay, what do we need to do in order for the asset health to stay on the required level? Then doing that, we then get to the freeze status. And doing then that, we really get to the core of the assets, and we get to the minimum required score. So actually the total scope, it is reduced to some extent already. By doing that, we also, of course, then make sure that the budgets which are involved, they tend to decrease. Having taken into account all the requirements that apply with respect to COVID in the procedures, we also make sure that the risk related to COVID, it's also covered. And then, of course, if we then do all this, also because of the total scope, resource availability becomes less of a risk. It's also more in control because we have dedicated, special focus, especially on that, as well as your legal requirements. You clearly have had a look on that, and where possible, where there are possibilities to extend the intervals, you have discussed it, and to make sure that everything is still compliant with as you should do. So doing this, we then have created the balancing act, and by that we are still in control in a very transparent way. And that is then the good thing about this way of this modus operandi, to say it in nice wording. Okay, having said this, I'd like to pass back the control to Savannah. I've seen some questions, I think, on the screen. So, well, Savannah, I'm curious.
Yes, thank you, Ben and Geert Hang, for this presentation about postponing turnarounds and everything that comes with that. We have had a few questions come in, and I think we have time for a couple. So let me just look through and find one here. Okay, in which case has this approach been applied, and what were the effects?
Yes, I think I can answer that one. So we had a turnaround, and it should be postponed because this was not because of COVID because of production reasons. So what we had to do, we had to check all the temporary repairs if they could hold the new 6 months interval. So we checked all the repair boxes, all the other repairs, and had to prove risk-based that it was okay to postpone. And we done it.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, I think we have time for one more. In which requirements does this approach impose to a company? Is this something that Stork can do on its own?
I think I can address that one. Of course, as Stork, we have our technical scope. So actually, I think we are quite unique on that one. We know what's required in order to do a job. On the other hand, of course, if you talk about plants, the companies, they own the plants. They know what are the related risks in terms of downtime and the process requirements. So actually, what you have down there is a kind of unique combination of, on one side, the specific knowledge about the plant, what the requirements are, and on the other hand, the technical knowledge of Stork, who knows what to do and how to do it. So having this combination, I think you have a unique cluster, which then can make sure that everything what needs to be done is done on the correct way in the right interval. So for that, it's yeah, I think it is a very efficient way of working. And so it's not only Stork who can do it, you need the combination.
Okay,
I hope this answers the question.
Thank you very much. There are more questions, and I just want to ensure everyone that if we did not get to your question, we will be answering all of these questions in the follow-up material. So we're out of time, so I'd like to go ahead and conclude this webinar. I hope that you've all gained some insight, some valuable insight into this topic of postponed turnarounds. It goes without saying, we're really happy to discuss this with you directly as well. So if you wish, you can leave us a message in that Q&A box there at the bottom of your screen, and we'll contact you later on. We are going to leave this presentation open for just a few more minutes to allow anyone who has questions or comments to go ahead and enter them now. As I mentioned before, this webinar is part of our series of weekly Wednesday webinars about smart maintenance and asset management related topics. So we'd love to have you again next Wednesday at this same time. We'll be talking about upfront operational readiness. And you can find more information and a link to register on our website, stork.com. This presentation and the recorded webinar will be available on the Stork website, and all registered attendees today will be receiving an email in the coming days with the link back to that. I just want to thank you all again for your attention and for your contribution. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe, and remember that we are your partner in the field of smart maintenance and asset performance improvement. We are here to help you.